Last thing I want to talk about is understanding the consumer. And back in the days, we could argue that this industry has been pretty far away from the actual consumer. But now with D2C, direct to consumer, with agency models, we are moving closer and closer and closer to the actual consumer. So it becomes way more relevant to understand, what are the actual consumer trends, like social listening, for instance, but then also using predicting algorithms to understand how would a model introduction of ourselves, a model introduction of the competition, weather, current economic situation, fashion trends, how would that kind of impact the actual demand that we're seeing in a given market regarding certain models? Now, AI is going to able to help us with that, to predict how should we think about the consumer at a given point in time in a market, and then also pivot it back to our supply chain, to adapt our supply chain so that it can actually kind of satisfy this changing demands that we are seeing. Demonstrating the value and the fascination and the potential that this brings also helps people opening up for data structures as a requirement. So if we see, okay, this is actually for the greater good of all of us, then it opens up people to do that. And then just to share one experience that I had in a boardroom, it starts from the top, right? I was in a boardroom with a CEO of one of the companies that is present here, and a couple of other board members, and we had exactly that discussion. Is it actually a good idea that we now share the data across departments? And this individual was kind of listening to the conversation and said at a certain point, listen guys, there's only one entity that owns this data, and it is the company, and with that our shareholders. No one of us, not me, not you guys, we don't own the data. It is company data. So actually let's treat it as that. And from then on, I saw him very deliberately ensuring that the data is actually shared. And whenever something came to this individual's attention, that data wasn't shared, this individual acted on it. So it has to start from the top, but we also, again, building on Maria, have to constantly kind of create the bigger vision of why are we actually doing this? What is the overall rationale why we should go in that direction? I mean, data constitutes power. If I'm working in marketing, if I'm working in sales, I'm not necessarily interested to give that very precious consumer data, market data to all the rest of the company, because then I could ask the question, okay, what am I actually here for? If I'm working in procurement, I'm not necessarily interested that everyone has the supplier data, that everyone has the cost data. If I'm working in finance, EBIT data, EBITDA data, revenue data, I want to keep that for myself, because that is, again, it constitutes why I am in the company. Now, if that is true, generative AI is not going to work. AI generally is not going to work on that basis. What we need to do is create, coherent and consistent data structures that are basically available to everyone, that we collectively trust and improve if we don't trust it. So a very open data culture is required to make all of that happen that we just talked about. And again, yes, it is a technical challenge, but we have great, companies that can help us with that. But it is also a cultural change, a cultural transformation. Shouldn't underestimate that. Again, what does it mean for us from a culture perspective? Because I think what we find in startups a lot is this very agile culture. So you try, you fail, you try a different thing, you fail again, you try, it works, you kind of expand it. In corporations, we're not necessarily used to that working style, right? If we fail, it's a big thing. We try to cover it. We want to, show up with what great things we do. But we need, because when we are rolling this out, let's be realistic. It's not going to work in the first time. The MVP is always good, no question about it. As soon as we get in scaling, then the trouble starts. So the question is, how can we deal with these setbacks and not just say, okay, I knew this is not going to work.